Welcome to Power Lunch Live. It is great to be with you here on Tuesday midday on the East Coast. I know, Ron, it's early for you on the West Coast, but wherever you are, welcome. It's good to be with you. Now, the point of Power Lunch Live is to have today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, CEOs, people who are doing amazing work in the world that we can learn from, so we can get better at what we do. Now, the fun part is that the show is interactive. We've already got comments. We've got Debbie. Thanks for tuning in, Debbie. Yasir, I think, and Lee. Thank you guys for commenting already on the program. We haven't even gotten started. So the fun part is you guys can ask your questions of our guests live right here on the program on LinkedIn Live, of course, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and probably something else I'm missing. So please, we monitor those feeds during the program and we answer those questions, hopefully. Now, if you like the program, give it a like or share so that our network can grow and your network can benefit from the conversations. Today, we're going to talk about why lying becomes normal at companies. And we're going to really dig into this subject because I think it's actually fascinating. If you look at like Volkswagen and Wells Fargo a few years ago, how did that happen in a company so large? So we're going to talk about that with Ron Carucci. Ron is a managing partner at Navalent and works with CEOs and executives who are pursuing transformational change for their organizations. Now, he's a best-selling author of 8 books, including a recent Amazon #1, Rising to Power. Ron is a regular contributor to Harvard Business Review. Please look at his work there. It's just a phenomenal body of work and great insight on Harvard Business Review. He also is a regular contributor and colleague at Forbes and contributor at Forbes. He's a 2-time TEDx speaker. And he's also a colleague in the Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches. Ron, welcome.
Rhett, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, first off, why do people lie?
The data would suggest that most of us do it to self-protect, not for self-interest. Our first instinct is not to try and get something out of it, but our first impulse is to fend away a threat. Interestingly, a recent neuroscience study, I'm steeped in writing about this now, found that our natural impulse is to tell the truth. That in all the brain studies people have done to study experimental opportunities to actually lie for self-interest, there's a delay. So our immediate impulse is to both want honesty and to give honesty. That it's a time delay and a chance we have to think about it and to calculate our rewards or to calculate our risk. That's when lying sets in. So the great news is we're hardwired to be honest, and we're hardwired to want honesty. But left to our own devices, left exposed to certain types of dishonesty or environments of dishonesty, our brains actually adapt. So our amygdala, where we sensitize past experience to dishonesty, actually becomes desensitized. So what happens is the longer you go having behaved dishonestly, the more your brain says, this is okay. So it's almost like the neurological slippery slope sets in, and you decide the next. And what's interesting in the experiments, they learned that the amount you delayed and sort of amped up your results in one moment could predict how much you do it the next time.
Really?
So the message is clear. People show up at work by and large ready to be honest and tell you the truth and behave justly and fairly, and you turn them into liars.
Interesting. And well, we're going to have to dig into that. That's no question about that. So is that what happened then? I mean, you talked about some of the, I read a little while ago, an article you wrote in HBR about, Wells Fargo and Volkswagen and how that happened. Is that what happened? Is that the culture was just, they weren't living up to the value of what they said who they were. And so people, does that happen?
At Wells Fargo, we all know this to be true, right? 5,000 people didn't wake up on one morning all on the same day and say, hey, here's an idea, right? That went on for a decade. And the Justice Department's findings in their report said, verbatim, the findings was a colossal gap between actions and espoused words. And so in our research, one of the 4 findings we found that predicts whether people will lie or tell the truth was strategic clarity. Are you being who you say you are? And when you are, you're 3 times more likely to have people tell you the truth, behave justly and fairly, and do the right thing and serve a greater purpose. But when your actions and words don't match, you've now basically institutionalized duplicity. You've said at our company, we say one thing, but we do another. And so now you've given people permission to follow suit. So now you're 3 times more likely to have people lie, cheat, and serve their own interests. Just because you put a beautiful poster on the wall that had beautiful words on it, you made mugs and T-shirts and screensavers, and you did little workshops and videos, and executives, did presentations around the company, and that was it. And so now you've campaigned your way to a strategic identity rather than embodied one. And people roll their eyes, they imbue cynicism. And actually, as a group in London called Contextus, they're a great research firm, B Corp, and their purpose is to measure purpose. And what they found was, if you don't claim a purpose at all, you're there for shareholders only, make money, that's all you're there for, and you have no bones about that, employees can live with that. They would prefer a company that serves a higher purpose and a way for their work to feel meaningful. But if you don't claim to be so, they can choose it. But if you claim a purpose that you don't leave, now you've made it worse, because now you've lied. And you actually are making the culture far more toxic than if you just said nothing at all.
And, the conventional wisdom right now is you got to have a purpose. You got to have a bigger purpose. That if you go back to what was it last year where the Business Roundtable said the new definition of a corporation is not only the stakeholders, but it includes the employees and I think the suppliers, and there may have been other stakeholders, but other stakeholders are now part of the definition, right? And it seems to me that a lot of businesses are kind of clamoring now to have that social purpose, and almost, I was on a program this morning and I was talking about how I feel like you almost have to pick a side now as a corporation. You have to declare a side in our societal woes and our societal issues that we're going through, right? So what you're saying is that's not necessarily true. If you do that, you better daggone well live it, or you're in trouble.
You can't pick one side while living on the other one. You can't have it both ways. And all the data would suggest that there's a right side of history to be on this, right? The performance of socially purpose-driven corporations, from a stock performance, from a cost of goods sold, from a CAGR, from profitability, from customer loyalty, from every metric you want, suggests that the world is shifting toward wanting companies that are purpose-minded and clearly serve a greater good. Now, everybody's purpose washing, right? The marketers are clamoring for ways to create the illusion of purpose. Yeah. And consumers see right through it. They will not trust your brand. They will withdraw their loyalty. And so the purpose washing that's being done, same with racial, justice, right? I talked to an African-American scientist. She's a brilliant woman. And she said, now everybody's blackwashing, right? And so trying to create the illusion of commitment, people will punish you irreparably. I think the pandemic will show that if you came down on the wrong side of history during this pandemic and you were not compassionate and caring and generous and sacrificial, but you served your own needs, when things become more stable, the consumers are not going to forget. And they will remind you who you chose to be during this season and how they're going to vote with their feet and their dollars somewhere else. So I think with what we know about employees wanting meaningful work and wanting a sense of to get up in the morning besides their paycheck, companies who don't dig deep and do the really, really hard work to create a purposeful environment are just leaving money on the table and wasting a lot. And their shareholders, of all the stakeholders they serve, the shareholders ought to be asking questions like, why aren't you doing this?
Why do you think, a lot's been written about the culture at companies like Amazon and stuff. It doesn't seem like, it seems like a pretty harsh and toxic environment in some aspects of of places like that. Why aren't they paying a price for? Because their employees are screaming. I mean, they're out. I mean, they're internally, I mean, the culture seems toxic. Is why do you think companies like that aren't paying a price for that?
Yet, I think I would say yet.
Okay.
I think when you're riding the arc of an incredible growth streak that they've been on, remember they've made no money, right? They're still not profitable as a company, right? So, or if not until almost like last year, right? So they're getting away with a lot, and people want the convenience of what they offer. And it also depends what pocket you go into, right? There are pockets of Amazon, their web services, for example, where employees are thrilled. They do incredibly scientific work to select people that fit their culture. If you are driven and you fit that world, you'll be great. The problem is when the culture they've created is that mismatch for who you are, and there are many people for whom that's the case. So it's a matter of time. Nobody can run from that consequence or that accountability forever. The wave will crest, right? We know that's just how business works. Go across town to their other side of the water, to Microsoft, right? And look what went on there for years and years and years in the Obama era. Was talk about toxic, right? So now fast forward 5 years since Saudi has taken over, and the culture is doing remarkably transformative things. It's a culture of humility and care and empathy and influence. They completely overhauled how they hold people accountable. So they faced the music and took their medicine, and thank God Sadia is who they put at the helm there.
Yeah. Right person at the right time.
They got very fortunate, and they almost screwed it up too. But the pendulums will swing both ways, and so as the ancient text says, this too shall pass. If you're having a great season, this too shall pass.
Guaranteed, right?
If you're not ready, shame on you.
Yeah, fair enough. Right. I mean, that's the way to live. That's the wisdom to. We'll go with that gospel right there. How about that? So I want to talk about you and your team took on this like 15-year longitudinal study. I think you guys did over 3,000 interviews, over 200 organizations that you assessed. What was it that you found about? I mean, you were looking at honesty. You were looking at the culture. What did you find? Kind of go through that in the broad terms.
So first of all, we weren't actually looking for honesty, right? That wasn't what we went after. So we decided we've used artificial intelligence. We've used IBM Watson to analyze our data for, this is the second study we've done with them. And the first time we sort of wanted to be good academics and impress people. And we went in with parameters and hypotheses and variables and sort of told the data, tell us if there's any kind of correlation between these dimensions. We were trying to then understand from an individual leadership point of view, what predicts whether a leader will ascend and succeed versus ascend and fail. Since we've known for 20 years that half of them flame out, right, within 18 months, we wanted to know why. This time we went in and said, because that technology, I mean, if you've ever had any experience with the AI there, it's creepy. Like it's really creepy, scary what it can do. So we said, you know what? It's probably smarter than us. Let's not tell it what we're looking for. Let's let it tell us what we should be looking for. So we sent in the data, and it comes back with sort of drill sites, right? So here are some things that you might want to drill here. There could be some interesting things to look at. And one of them was being able to connect honesty, truth-telling, and justice to certain types of behaviors and under what conditions people would choose one or the other. So we're like, oh yeah, let's drill there. Because I've done a lot of work in ethics and that part of the work of culture for the last bunch of years. And it's been fascinating to me. And we're all tired of the Volkswagen, Wells Fargo, Theranos stories. That I wanted to know more. So we found 4 conditions under which you could predict statistically people would either tell the truth or lie, behave justly or unjustly, self-servingly, serve a purpose or serve themselves. The first one I told you about before was strategic identity. Be who you say you are. The second one was accountability. if your accountability processes, not your
Okay.
reward systems, but your accountability systems were seen as fair, meaning the way you talk about my contribution, the way you assess my contribution, I believe to be adequate and fair and has dignity at its basis, right? So you're
Mhm.
not separating the contribution from the contributor, but you're actually merging us. If that's true, you're 4 times more likely to have people tell you the truth, be honest, and serve purpose. But if it's not fair, meaning I feel categorized in a box, I feel like I fill out the forms, you send them on to HR, and you have no idea who I am or what I do. If I feel invisible, I now have to lie about my mistakes and hide them or embellish my accomplishments. And so I will. So now you're 4 times more likely to have people deceive you and do the wrong thing. The third
And if
was,
they feel like they're invisible, they don't think it matters. So
well, you told me I don't matter.
right.
You actually, what's so fascinating, our friends in the neuroscience world found that when you're, we've all had this story happen, right? I was talking to a client who just finished his performance review, big executive, and like the veins in his neck, she gave me a 3. I've always been a 4. My last company, I was a 5. Just because she gets a quota of 3s or 4s she can give out, I get stuck with a 3. And like, I mean, think of how irrational that is, right? How incredibly, it's true. Categorization triggers our amygdala with threat. When we literally feel unsafe when someone says you're this, even if you are a 5, you still feel threatened,
Yeah.
right? Our sense of control over our identity is now completely obliterated by a category. So we're forcing people to behave badly by taking dignity, by undignifying how we treat their work. In a knowledge economy, who used to be, the self-helpers would say, you're not what you do. Well, turns out today we kind of are, right?
We identify that way, right? We in a huge part of that's who a large part of our life is.
Well, and all of our contributions are in the form of ideas, solutions, actions, right? So they're coming out of us. They're literally, I'm not making, most of us aren't making things. But even if we are, we're proud of them, right? So big issue. Third one was governance, how you make decisions. So if your meetings are all orchestrated theater, people go in and we're here under the illusion of looking at solving a problem, making a decision, but I can tell within 4 seconds you already made it. And the data that I get to participate in is all sort of scrubbed and, sanitized, versus those meetings that are governing your body of work or executing your strategy are open exchanges of honest ideas. People feel free to speak their minds. People can, offer healthy critique to make the ideas better. If that's the case, now you're 3.5 times more likely to have people tell you the truth, behave justly, and behave fairly. But if it's all a ruse, and the best data I can get is in the smoke-filled rooms or in the hallways via the rumor network, now you're 3.5 times more likely to have people lie, cheat, and distort data. And the last one, which really, I think, took our breath away, Rhett, because we didn't expect it, was border wars, right? The cross-functional collaboration, silos. Every company has them. We have all kinds of, we have, border wars, silos, family feuds. We have all kinds of names for these things. We know that at the seams of the organization where all of the rich value gets created, we have these untenable, intractable conflicts. But when you have cohesion, when people know that someone from the other department's coming to ask them for something, they don't roll their eyes and hide. They're eager to see them. They want to work together. When that's the case, you are 6 times more likely to have people tell the truth, behave fairly, and do the right thing. But when there's a border war there, when the conflict is not resolved, when KPIs fight each other, now you're 6 times more likely to have people distort the truth, cheat, and do the wrong thing. Because when we fragment the organization, now we have dueling truths, right? So now it's about rivalry. Now, if it's my truth versus your truth, I'm going to win. It's not about being right. It's about being winning. So, and we've seen that, sales, marketing, operations, supply chain, R&D, finance, HR, everybody. We've seen it all. So that was a big leap. But the really impressively astounding or terrifying part of the statistics is that they're cumulative.
Okay.
So if you have all of those conditions, you are now either 16 times more likely to have people be honest, tell you the truth, and behave toward serving a greater purpose, or you're 16 times more likely to be the next Wells Fargo or Theranos, because the ethical fungus is growing in your petri dish now. It's there somewhere. And if you don't go root it out, you're just encouraging it to grow.
That just seems like a roadmap right there for how to build a culture.
That's my intent. There's no more excuses, right? There's no more to say, we don't know how this happens. We know exactly how it happens now. And those are 4 fixable, hard.
Very hard. Yeah, very hard.
But not impossible. And the great news about the stats, it suggested to us that perfection isn't the goal, right? It's not all or nothing. So for example, if you were to improve strategic clarity, meaning the alignment between who you say you are and what you do, by even 20%, get closer aligned, you can have a 12% increase in truth-telling and purpose behavior. And justice.
What's surprising to me in that is it's not about hiring the wrong people. It's not about, if you look back at some of those cases, it almost says that there's not a fault in hiring unethical people, or it's the culture that did it. I mean, it's not the people that did it. It's the culture that sort of enabled it.
Right. Either by not stopping it or encouraging it. Right. At Wells Fargo, it was promoting it. Right. It was sort of saying you have no other choice but to do this. Because at Wells Fargo, they had that thing called GREIGHT, GREIGHT, meaning there were, everybody was required to try and sell 8 services across all customers, right? So when they got wind of it, I mean, they'd known for a long time this was going on. They tried to suppress it, but they never, the whole Be Great campaign, they never dismantled that. So they kept the engine running while claiming that they were trying to behave and change. So it's, are there bad apples? Sure. Do you have narcissists? Sure.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Holmes was wackadoodle woman, right? So yes, occasionally you get pathological behavior that sets things off course. But by and large, that's not how these things begin. These are systemic issues. They're not bad actors. And what I got tired of, Rhett, was the bad actor the bad apple explanation.
Right.
I mean, it's really, or the worst part is, what was just the culture? Well, what does that even mean? Right? What levers, is it you had one of the values on the wall was steal? I don't think so. So when you say it's the organizational systems in place that shape behavior, what are they and what can leaders do? And that's what I wanted to find out. I wanted to understand, okay, how often, you say you have these values, you say you have this purpose, great. How often do you talk about it? Do people in every meeting say, how are we living this purpose? Great case study, DaVita, the kidney dialysis company, right?
Yeah.
We're in deep trouble. The new CEO came in and said, we're going to flip the script here. We're not going to serve shepherds. We're going to serve our patients, change the culture around. But one of the many practical things he did was he had a call with his top 1,000 employees every 2 weeks. And the question he was expected to answer is, what tangible things in the last 2 weeks since our last call have you done to advance and serve our purpose? Right? Wow. That's practical, right? Okay, money where your mouth is. So if you say you are these things, great. What's the proof? What are you actually doing? How are people held accountable for them? How are they trained? How often do you talk about it? When there are gaps, how freely do people raise them and talk about them? Yeah. It's, these are not, ask your people about your accountability systems. Do you feel seen and heard and known? Do you say the words, I can't wait to my performance appraisal? I love my quarterly check-ins.
I don't think I've ever heard those words.
Said nobody ever, right? When you see meetings on your calendar, do you say, wow, this is going to be a fun meeting? Or wow, this will be a chance to catch up on my email? You can figure these things out. And if you're not willing to, great. Don't say you're committed to your purpose and your values, though, because you're not.
That is so simple, right? It blows my mind how simple. Like that, when you have a problem just by some simple questions. I mean, you're absolutely right. So one of the so we've got Amy is joining us. Thanks, Amy, for being here. Rajan, thanks. We've got somebody in from San Francisco. I think Rajan's from Canada. And so, Lee says, thank you for covering this topic. We've got Yasser from Pakistan. Thanks for Yasser. Looks like just a bunch of comments, no questions yet. So thank you guys all for joining us.
Yeah, everybody.
So let's talk about the new book that you're coming out with. It's titled "Leading with Purpose." Leading with Power of the Power of Truth, Justice, and Purpose. Talk about the book a little bit, and you put all this together, and what's that gonna look like?
So the title is, to be honest, lead with the power of truth, justice, and purpose. And the name, so what we learned in the data was that honesty isn't a character trait. It's not a moral compass. Honesty is a capability, right? And it's the combination of truth, justice, and purpose. You cannot have one without all three. You can't have the culture experts trying to create psychologically safe environments for people to speak up when there's a bunch of inequity. You can't have the DEI folks trying to campaign their way to equality when there's unfairness somewhere else. You can't have the power washers trying to make it look like we have purpose when things are unfair. So the only way to have a purpose-driven culture of honesty and justice is to have all three at the same time. So honesty is the combination of truth, justice, and purpose. Tell the truth directly and graciously, do the right thing, serve a greater good. You have to do them all. And it's a capability you have to be good at. So, we go to the honesty gym and work out, right? We don't come naturally good at these things. So you have to work at getting better at them. And the book is both a look at national historical figures of organizations who've led and modeled these things for us. The book is about exemplars. I'm not looking to tell the Theranos, Wells Fargo stories. I'll give them, dishonorable mentions. But I interviewed dozens of thought leaders and executives from phenomenal companies who've actually lived this, right? So Microsoft, Best Buy, Cabot Creamery, DaVita, a host of them, Contextus, to understand how they're doing it. If you're embodying the ability to live a honest, just, and purposeful organization, what's your secret? How'd you get there? And it's stunning how many leaders have set their mind to this and prevail through difficult changes to bring their organizations to these places. So I very much, to use your word before, I want this to be a roadmap. I want it to be a blueprint to say, these are people you want to emulate and can emulate. Their stories offer instructive wisdom for you to apply to your company. It's not a plug and play, but you can do the hard work and shape your organization's ability to behave honestly in the world, if that's really what you want.
Talk about some of the companies that you mentioned a few right there. What were some of the ones that really stood out to you, where there was a tough transition, or a transition between a new leader and an old leader? I mean, Microsoft is a great example. You talked about that, but are there any others that are really stuck in your mind that are just, to you, the prime example of how you can take a culture where you are failing, and it is failing, and turn it around?
I think, Hubert Joly, our friend from MG100, his story at Best Buy is really just inspiring. He took over from the founder. He took over in a financial crisis. They were financially struggling, sort of dancing with Chapter 11. And Hubert decided, we're going to do well by doing good, right? We're not here to sell TVs and refrigerators. Certainly if people want those, we'll give them to them, but we're here to solve problems. So they began an incredible journey of making sure that first and foremost, everybody on the floor was human. That we're here to enhance lives through technology. And if you can't do that as a human being, you shouldn't be doing it at all. So they asked thousands of their employees, when are we at our best, right? If we're Best Buy, when are we at our best? And listened, and really listened to what they heard. And shaped the organization around that purpose. Hubert tells me in my interview with him, which will be in the book, a little sneak preview here, tells me the story of when he first arrived being CEO. The founder's still on the board, or he's still in the shadows. He's trying to manage that. That's always an interesting dance, right?
Right.
And it comes time to do the first performance review. And he gets the forms, and he sees all the boxes that have to have numbers and forms. And he just watching him tell the story was so going, what are we doing this for? What, numbers? And I have to put letters, and then I have to what? So he just didn't even do it. He just told the person he comes in and said, well, how'd you do? And what do you want to do next? He just had a human conversation around their performance. They were harder on themselves than he would have been. They were more honest. He trusted them. And he said, what do you need from me?
Wow.
He said, the idea of putting numbers next to people, it was so funny to watch his cultural background kind of have a short-circuiting brain moment of going, put numbers next to something. What do I do that for?
The body language is just telling, right?
It's like it was a visceral allergy to the notion of, categorizing people with numbers and names and ratings. He's just like, I don't understand why I would do that. He didn't say I don't understand why we would do that. I just can't get past myself first. So it was just this beautiful moment of him realizing that he wanted to bring a much more humane approach to accountability and purpose, and recognize that without it, he probably wasn't going to get very far. And of course, the rest of the story's history. They had a remarkable turnaround. He became one of the world's most admired and effective CEOs. The culture, has become this place people do rely on them for help. The Geek Squads, nobody fears them anymore. It's a whole lot different than going to a Genius Bar at Apple. Yeah. And so it's just a beautiful story. And again, to use your words before, these are simple, elegant, not easy, but simple and elegant ways we get to our best selves and the best versions of ourselves and the best versions of our organizations.
That you just said something that it was really a clarity for me. When you go to Best Buy, and I'm not plugging Best Buy, but you get you feel like you get a genuine conversation. It's not I go to the Genius Bar at Apple to fix my Mac, and I feel there's an arrogance there, right? There's a snobby, I can't say the word.
You're so lucky to be here.
There's an air there. Right. Best Buy, you're talking to Joe, and Joe's saying, hey, I like this. There's a different experience.
Oh, definitely yeah. And you trust the information. I'm a Best Buy power user. And when I go in and I ask a question about a device I need or a cable I need or whatever, and I can't choose, I don't feel upsold. I feel told, if you buy that one, this is what will happen. If you buy that one, this is what will happen. And when I say, well, which one would you buy? They'll tell me. It's a very different experience.
Yeah, definitely, and there's no doubt about that. What else surprised you in the research? You mentioned the big one, but what else surprised you? Some of the other things that came out of that work.
I think, Rhett, it was the intersection of truth, justice, and purpose. That it wasn't just about that. Honesty is more than just saying accurate things, right? That they have to be believable too. I have to believe that when you tell me the accurate information, that you're not ill-motivated in doing so, and that there's some greater good being served by me following your advice. And so, when we look across the world today and we see so much inequality and inequity in organizations built into we're biased human beings. Bias is not bad. Bias is a function of the human brain. That's how we're wired. Our brains are misers. They're lazy. They want to do as little work as possible. And so we create templates to make sense of the world. Those are biases. And it stands to reason that if we're biased human beings, we're going to build those biases into our systems, right? So we know that there are certain privileged populations and privileged roles in organizations, privileged types of work. If you're a brand company, your marketers are privileged. If you're a tech company, your engineers are privileged. There are certain represented peoples, right, with certain skin colors or ethnic backgrounds that are privileged or not. And so if you don't want to take on leveling the playing field so that no matter who you are, you have as much of a chance of succeeding as anybody else here, you can't call yourself honest. You can call yourself honest enough if that's what your standard is, but you can't say you're honest. We don't get credit for good intentions. So I may intend to treat people equally, but if I know my pay scales are inequitable, if I know it's not a fair playing field, if I know certain people have access to opportunities more so than others, not because of their talent, I can't say that it's an equal environment, which means I cannot say I'm honest.
Was there a correlation in any of that data about sort of public trust or and a correlation between revenue and profitability? And did you find any data in there about when you and I guess there's probably a correlation, and it has to be between trust and profitability.
There's piles of it. So the Edelman Trust Barometer does an incredible study every year. The Accenture Agility Index all found out that when you violate public trust, your money takes a bottom line. So two examples in the Accenture Competitive Agility Index, for example, one company tried to pull off a sustainability stunt. Basically, they were committed to their environments. It was more like a PR stunt. They didn't include the right environmentalists in the process. Their EBITDA took a massive hit, and their revenue dropped hundreds of millions of dollars. Another company got caught in a money laundering scandal. Took $1 billion hit to their bottom line and a 64% EBITDA drop.
Wow.
So it is a Newtonian science helped us out here. Cause and effect are very close together in this case. And so the world is just not going to tolerate that anymore. Your consumers are just not going to, you look at, what we now know about Gen Z is 60% of them or more are going to choose the brands they buy, the clothes they wear based on the brand they believe in. And they are not going to shop or buy clothes or represent brands that they think are doing harm.
Oh, I do it now. And, because we have so much, this is not like you and I, when we grew up in our parents' generation, my dad drove a Ford no matter what. And he had this, and he, bought this and he bought this and he bought suits here. And, now, I mean, I find myself doing this today. And if I don't believe in there are a couple companies I just do not spend money with because I don't believe in what the CEO has done or said or actions that they've had, that they've done in the past. And I can't do it. And I think that's going to be even more prevalent going forward.
I hope this is okay to tell this story.
Please do.
So I have had a financial advisor for 12 years here in Seattle. Loved him. Great guy, good partner, smart. I trusted him. In the classic brokerage model, he and his team exited the firm they were in and went to Wells Fargo Wealth Advisors. And of course, wanted me to go with him. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. He goes, I know, but they can't. I'm like, I can't do it. And it wasn't just so much the big scandal, but Wells Fargo happens to be. I know people that work with it very closely, and during the PPE applications, they were horrible.
Yeah,
they didn't treat my firm well. So I don't know how much they really have changed. And I trust this man with my future, but I thought about it for days. I tried to think about what does Grace tell me to do? What is, how can people deserve second chances? I mean, I worked myself through it and I just couldn't get there.
Oh, I mean, because you begin to question, well, why is he going there? Right.
I asked that. Well, that was the first question I asked, and he had for him a good and plausible explanation from a technology point of view, and for him there actually was an ethics issue, and so I'm like, good for you if you've made peace with the choice, and that's great. Good for you.
I can't.
I can't. And I really tried to talk myself into it because I had a great relationship with him and I trusted him. It was hard. I think that's the new normal today. That's the new normal today.
Mine's not on the scale. I have a favorite sandwich place. I used to really like it. Seeing what the CEO has done and some things, I just can't eat there, and it bugs me because I like the sandwich. But
I think we all, if we all come naturally wired for honesty, we all have moral compasses that want to point north. The world has sensitized us to what those compasses are telling us. We've been told to pay attention to those things, and now we are. And
do you think that, I hate dragging politics into it, but do you think that the political discourse with COVID and the social injustice and issues that we're dealing with there, the mistrust of the media and the information that we, I mean, how do you manage that in a company, right? I mean, how do you,
well, I mean, here's
does that question make sense? I mean,
here's the challenge is we have not learned to have good, healthy civil discourse in our companies. So people are walking on political eggshells all the time, wearing plastic smiles, dancing around all the elephants in the room that we don't want to talk about, which means that outside the companies, people are taking to social media and with levels of entitlement for outrage you can't even measure. We have so grossly confused speaking your truth with speaking the truth. And
I love that.
Given people permission to say your outrage is justified. If you're outraged by it, it must be true. And now, so we have these two different types of people outside the company. You have these, we can all at any given time, 24/7, go to any one of your social media feeds, and you will find somebody ranting about something that you either agree or disagree with. So the polarization is artificial, right? None of us really disagree that much. We just want to hate. And so the neutral ground, and of course the media gets paid to amplify your echo chamber, right? They are only rewarded for clicks, likes, and revenue purchases if they keep your echo chamber going. So you're never going to see a different point of view in your feed. They know what you believe, and they're only going to curate that content for you. You're never going to see an alternative point of view in your feed unless you go actively looking for it. None of us are going to do that. Right. So we're amplifying outrage as the new truth-telling thing, and so painfully confusing them because now everything is politically hijackable, right? There isn't an issue you can politicize that I'll bet you there are people who would find out what the political party is of that CEO of that sandwich shop and tell you that's the reason why that sandwich shop behaved that way.
Oh, I believe that, right? I mean,
so whether it's true or not, we're gonna if we can politically hijack it, we will.
How do you deal with that internally in a company? I mean, when we're talking about culture, right? We're talking about honesty. And we're talking about, I mean, it almost seems you have to address that too now.
And CEOs, are becoming activists, and most people believe that's the last bastion of trust is for companies to become more activist. I think you have to create conditions for hard and good conversations. There have to be conversations inside about racial inequality. And we have to hear those stories. There have to be conversations about political discourse. If you're a conservative in companies today, you can't be hiding because you're afraid people are going to beat you up, right? Because now people assume if you're conservative, you must support Trump, which is not necessarily the truth. So how do you disentangle those things? If you're in a highly conservative environment, how do you make sure that the people who are progressive, you don't vilify them? We have just learned to vilify each other instantly. If you're a they, then you're not a we. And I think if you cannot, that statistic in our data about 6 times more likely with border wars, I wouldn't be surprised if 2 years from now that's 10 times. Because the border wars now are not just functional or departmental or regional. Now they're political, now they're social, now they're identity border wars. And so we have more fragmentation than ever now, and we're paying more attention to it. And if you don't help people not just focus on the differences, but focus on the common ground, where is our common humanity? Where we have common good? Where are we serving a common purpose? And let people rediscover that we're not enemies. If you don't create the conditions for that to happen inside your organization in a healthy, productive way, you're just sending it all outside the company. And if you have not been in a Twitter storm yet, it's just a matter of when your company gets put in a Twitter storm for not doing it.
Do you think it's tougher to be a CEO now?
Oh, way tougher. I wouldn't want that job. It's always been the case that your life's on the Jumbotron 24/7. You're living in it, right? But now, again, my entitlement to outrage, I can throw whatever darts I want. I can even make up stories if I want. In fact, and so now your ability to, and most CEOs that I work with, they're tearing their hair out thinking, I just want to be authentic. I'm like, well, there's 20 versions of you. That's not a thing, right? Authenticity is relative. So how can you at least minimize the versions of you that there are, and at least control the narrative to a certain degree, recognize you'll never control it all. And leaders who have a need to try and control the narrative or hide a certain narrative will get crucified as a CEO. It's just not a fun job.
We make it sound so much fun, don't we? What scares you right now, and what are you excited about? Like with COVID, I mean, it's a hard question, awful question, but
I am scared of how divided we are as a nation. I really am. And you and I grew up in a generation where none of our parents certainly never would have predicted this, right? Yeah. Political differences were what they were, but this is another thing. And I'm scared for my children, for what they're inheriting from us. And I think if you polled an average group of Americans from across the country, from a diverse, I could find 10 white guys and still find a bunch of diversity among them, right? It's not about just, skin color or origin or sexual orientation. It's about a lot of different differences. But I think I could put a bunch of average on a political spectrum in a room, and I bet you I'd find more common ground about the environment, about immigration, about gun control, about our economy, about healthcare, than the media or politics would ever let you believe there was. And that frustrates the snot out of me. I think most of us want more of the same things and are willing to give and take on certain things than the people we've hired to do that job for us will ever do. Because they have to spend all their time raising money to campaign. And we hire people who are not capable of complex problem solving to solve complex problems. Not a good, to your point earlier about bad hires, I think we have about several hundred bad hires.
No argument there.
And that's a painful reality. So I'm scared of that. What excites me, though, is I think I want to believe that COVID gave us a glimpse into a newfound level of humanity, and that our capacity for compassion, our capacity for generosity, our capacity for sacrifice, and our capacity to believe in the best versions of ourselves, even in crisis. The cynics would say, well, it took a crisis. I want to believe that, okay, but it shows that it's there. And so if we somehow enjoyed that part of this tribulation as a pandemic, maybe we'll keep that with us. As a vaccine will come and go, and then do we have to go back to what we were? Can we stay as humane and caring and compassionate and kind as we've learned to be this season? I'm excited to see if we can.
You think we will?
I really hope so. It's going to piss me off if we don't. I think we can. I'll say it that way. I think we can.
I think that they're going to be.
Do you think we will?
I think that there will. Yes, I think some will, some won't. Obviously, I think we're seeing that again. We're seeing that in society today, right? If you don't wear a mask, if you don't, I had to bring that up. Damn it. But no, I think we will, and I think the companies that do it, the companies that take that lesson from this, will really flourish.
It will be handsomely rewarded.
This was an opportunity to show a different side of yourself as a leader, as an organization, and I think if you did that well, and you respond to the going back to the work question, and you respond to that well, and you respond to the concerns, and you respond to the way people are feeling in the higher levels of anxiety, and you take care of those, and you acknowledge that. I think absolutely those companies will do really well. So I'm like you. I'm optimistic about that, and I think that's going to spark some really interesting change.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think for the companies who didn't do it, if this revealed, an empathy deficit or a compassion deficit, the pandemic didn't cause that deficit; it just revealed it. Right.
And they knew it was there anyway. They knew that was probably there anyway.
Well, they were doing a good job hiding it, right? It wasn't being required of them. But now you don't suddenly get to whip up a bunch of care and compassion and generosity and flexibility and kindness just because the situation called for it. If that wasn't part of who you were before, you were already too late to the party when the pandemic hit.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you so much. This has been fascinating. This has been a really fun conversation. Where can so when's the book going to be done? When talk about that a second.
So I'm launching the book will be out in the spring,
Okay.
but I'm launching a launch series, a video series this fall. And that'll sort of be a sort of a let's go to the honesty gym together. And then I have a new news magazine show coming out in January called Moments of Truth that will feature some of the guests I interviewed for the book. And we'll have it's a multi-segment show, so it'll have a everyday justice segment. It will have a find your honest voice segment curated by other hosts besides me. So that's exciting. So I've got a whole journey up to that book launching in about a month or so. In the meantime, stay in touch and come find me at Navalent, NAVALENT.com. Where you'll find all kinds of videos and white papers and all kinds of blogs and cool resources for you as a leader, your organization, your team. If you want our playbook on transformation, you can come get our free ebook at navalent.com/transformation. Also find me on LinkedIn and Twitter, but stay connected and stay in touch.
So where's the series going to be? Is that a live series?
No, it's not a live series. It's all pre-recorded. I've been spending lots of days and nights in the studio recording. So that's there'll be a live component. So every video episode will be accompanied by a live webinar.
Okay.
So
all right.
Alternate weeks. So that'll all coming soon.
That's going to be via Zoom or I guess the webinar.
Yep.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, I hope we'll put the link. We've got the business site up on now on the feed. Certainly. We want to keep up and have you back and follow up when it comes out and talk more about it. I think this is going to be really interesting.
I'm excited. I want this to become a cause. I want to make honesty cool again.
Will there be tools for coaches and other advisors and stuff to use to help guide their companies through this process?
It'll be a whole toolkit and a whole section of every chapter is called Get Busy. And it's practical. Here's what you go do now.
Okay, great. I need that in my practice. So thank you so much, Ron. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and thank you for being on the Power Lunch, spending some time with us on Power Lunch Live today. Appreciate your time. We'll see you tomorrow. We've got a great lineup this week, and until then, stay safe, healthy, and have a great day.
Thanks, Rhett.
Thank you.